Hey, Lion, thanks for joining me.
What's going on, Rob? I appreciate you inviting me.
I'm glad to have you. You are doing a very cool thing that I discovered. You have a TikTok channel that has over 250,000 followers, and you offer dating tips and advice, which is fascinating to me. This coming from somebody I've been with my wife since we were in high school, so I know nothing about the dating world. I guess I'm fortunate to have had such a great long-term relationship, but at the same time, I never got to experience the dating life. So what was it that drew you to this like world and wanting to talk about this and give your advice to people?
Well, I kind of stumbled upon it a little bit. So definitely, like dating and relationships has been like a big factor, like in my life, and I think that most people's lives, right, to a certain extent. I think that by extension, it's not necessarily like the dating life as it is, but more so like relationships, right? I mean, I think we are brought on this earth, and the one thing that I think that we all need to just function, is to be surrounded by other people, and whether these people are romantic partners, whether they are friends, business partners, colleagues, employees, you know what I mean, like our family. I think that we need to be able to create these healthy relationships. And my videos, when they started, I really started creating a lot more videos about creating that healthier relationship with yourself first, right? Creating a healthier relationship with yourself, which will in turn will allow you to create these healthy relationships with other people, romantic or otherwise. So when I started creating videos that had to do with just creating a healthier relationship with yourself, those who did really, really well were specifically the ones that were kind of targeted towards also creating a healthier relationship, romantic relationship, right? And I kind of like doubled down on that, and it went a lot more into the dating and relationship sphere, which I think a lot of people, especially like in the past couple of years, really, really struggled with the pandemic and all that. So I kind of doubled down on these videos and kind of decided to make a brand around, specifically the dating and relationship stuff. But if you like, and I think that most of my followers have been following me for a little while, they understand and they definitely see that the advice goes way beyond just creating that healthy romantic relationship.
I definitely noticed that about watching your videos. A lot of them are about like self improvement in a way, I guess, like developing the relationship with yourself, as you mentioned, and you kind of like honing the way that you react to other people, instead of being a victim of other people's actions, like you decide how you react, to create your own experience, which I think is tremendously helpful and applies to a bunch of things, even outside dating. So that's fantastic. And you mentioned the pandemic. Obviously, that's turned, things upside down for a lot of people, especially those who are, wanting to get out and meet people. What are the biggest challenges over the past 2 years that you've experienced, aside from the obvious lockdowns and not being able to leave your house?
Well, I think like anything else, it's changed. Like Darwin said, it's not the strongest that survives, nor is it the most intelligent that survives. The one that survives is the one that's most adaptable to change. Do you know what I mean? So I think that the pandemic was just a proof of that, and like our entire lives are a proof of that. People often claim and talk about the fact that how dating specifically has changed in the past 20 or 30 or whatever amount of years. But yeah, you know what I mean? Everything changed in the past 20 or 30 or whatever years. And I think that that's the whole point. You know what I mean? I think that as we mature and we grow as people, we change and we develop and we grow, and our lives are not an exception to that either. They follow the same exact trajectory, for better or for worse. And I think that it's not better, it's not worse, it is just different. So the pandemic obviously had made it very clear that we need to be more adaptable to like the changes that of our environment, of like the people around us, restrictions and all of that stuff. So obviously that has a huge effect on dating specifically, because it changed the way, in a lot of ways, it changed the way we interacted, it changed the way we connected, it changed the way, you know what I mean, like that we were able to create these, romantic relationships with other people. But I think that pandemic or not, we were already going into that same direction, like, and like how the internet and social media and all of that stuff was already kind of like paved the ground to like what happened during the pandemic, and just made that change, rather than maybe in the next 5 years or 10 years compressed into like 2 or 3 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. What are some of the things that you think have changed permanently, now that we're kind of exiting this pandemic phase? How is dating different now than it was 2 years ago?
Well, I think that one of the major ways, and again, I think that it was even happening pre-pandemic, and now like during the pandemic, it really changed, is how we meet people for the most part. Do you know what I mean? When you and I met, like the first time we met was in person, and then we met again in person. You know what I mean? We weren't really, communicating too much through social media or through the internet. We were just like making plans and we were seeing each other. And I think that a lot of people were doing the same thing with their dating lives. You know, they weren't spending as much time getting to know one another through social media or through dating apps, or you know what I mean? And they just like went out and did dates. And since that was an obstacle and they could no longer do that, or they had to get a little bit more creative about the types of dates that there were, you know what I mean? Before it was pretty common. Okay, well, the first date is dinner, right? I don't know. Somebody at some point just decided that this was going to be a first date activity,
Yeah, dinner and
and
a
that
movie,
obviously
right?
really changed. Pardon me?
Dinner and a movie. That's the,
Dinner and a movie. So I think that that has changed the way we meet people and connected with people, and the importance of how we create that connection online versus just offline, right? And how we get to know people offline versus how we get to know people online, right? Because when I meet you, face to face, and we're breathing the same air and we're in the same room, and I can feel your energy a little bit. I can see where your eyes get, nervous when I ask certain questions, when you look away at certain times, when you get really engaged, and your body language tells me that this is something that you really want to talk about and that you are excited about. That's great. You know what I mean? But when you don't have the luxury of being able to do that anymore, how do you really get to know people, right? How do you use social media? How do you use dating apps, right? And how do you make them work for you instead of against you? How do you use them as the tools that they are to be able to connect people, still be able to get to know people in order to move down the stages of, getting to know someone and building that relationship? So I think that that probably is one of the biggest differences, as far as I can tell, that has happened in the past couple of years, right? The way we get to know people, the way we, make sure that we don't, quote unquote, waste our time with them if they don't align with us, if they don't want the same things, has really changed.
I guess in a lot of ways, it makes some people more comfortable stepping into the dating world because there's that separation of the internet and not being face to face and not having to feel as much anxiety about being in the same room as somebody else. But then it kind of removes a lot of the personal aspects of it, right? And as much as these technologies are developing and changing the way that we interact with people, the fundamentals of building a relationship, I feel, remain the same, right? So how do you go about meeting somebody and not wasting your time and making sure that you're representing yourself properly online versus in person?
Well, there's a lot of things, to answer that question. There's definitely a lot of elements, like first creating that, healthy relationship with yourself. So when you go out there and you meet people, you start attracting the types of relationships that you actually want to attract, but also getting a little bit like from that, how to use social media and everything, getting a little bit more systematic on how to use that, right? Because we cannot use online dating and present ourselves and like use online dating the way we would offline dating, right? Because it's not the same thing. We cannot ask the same types of questions. We cannot have the same types of conversations, right? If I'm sitting right in front of you and I ask you a question about your goals, about your dreams and all that, right? And you have to answer right there, right? You don't have a lot of time to think. This is something that you've taken and you have to answer that question. And as you do, I am observing. I'm sitting back and I'm looking at your body language, right? 94% of the sake of communication is nonverbal, right? So I learned so much more about you by that body language, by the enthusiasm or the lack of thereof, that you put into that answer, right? So I'm able to do that. But if I use the same techniques and if I use the exact same approach into online dating, right? I am not getting even half of the picture. Do you know what I mean? If I'm able to ask you a question about your goals and dreams and all that, and you have the luxury, right? Let's say we're doing that by text, right? You have the luxury of sitting down, waiting a couple hours, coming up with something that makes sense to you, right? Coming up with something that you feel will, put you in the best light, that will also kind of tell them what you think they want to hear in order to kind of open up to you a little bit more, in order to win your trust, right? So if we continue using the same strategies that we have been using pre-pandemic or even before that, right? Like that online, that offline type of aspect of dating, if we try to use the same strategies and apply them into online dating, I think more often than not, we will fail doing that, because it doesn't give us the picture. If you have the luxury of preparing your answer and making sure that it's, really well worded and that it puts you in the best light possible, right? I'm only getting to learn and know that tip of the iceberg. I'm getting to know the tip of the iceberg of who Rob actually is. Do you know what I mean? And then there's like a big shocker and a big surprise when I do actually meet you in person, right? And hopefully, again, as we're getting to know one another offline, for example, right? We would go on dates, we would see each other for maybe weeks or maybe even a couple of months, 2, 3 months as we're getting to know each other, right? If we apply the same timeline, if we apply the same strategies into online dating, and now we've been talking, right, for 3 months or 4 months online, we've been going back and forth, we're chatting every day. From time to time, maybe we'll do a phone call, but for the most part, we'll probably just do text messaging, right? I will meet you in person and I'll find out that that iceberg, you know what I mean? That tip is very, very small compared to like that entire persona, that entire person that I really don't know at all at this point, right? So adjusting your strategies a little bit, adjusting the type of approach, adjusting the questions, making sure that you follow certain time frames and timelines as you're getting to know one another, and moving it in a certain way that allows you to get to know them more and more and more, right? Going from texting into phone conversations, into video chats, and every step of the way you're supposed to accomplish something that will get you closer to really getting to know who you're talking to, and whether or not you have similar values, whether or not you have similar beliefs, whether or not you have similar goals, whether or not you're in alignment and you are working towards a relationship.
The way that you described it is fantastic, but it makes it sound like online dating has more of like a game element to it, that you're trying to strategize and like reveal the best of yourself with every message. And do you think that this is like a common practice that a lot of people try to do?
I don't think that I really dislike when people have that negative connotation when they talk about dating and they say the word game. In a sense, yes, it is a game, just like life is a game. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is a way to go through life if you want to get to what you want to get. You know what I mean? Being a slave to our, primary like emotions and triggers and all that often will not get us very far. Learning how to create that healthier relationship with yourself, so we respond to external things, external events, to people, right, in a way that aligns with the type of person that we actually want to become, is that game. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we want to get the job that we want to get, it is a game to learn how to, I don't know, either with network properly, to get certain jobs that will get you closer to that job that you really want to get. All of that stuff, you can call it a game. And I think that dating is the exact same thing. So I wouldn't have that negative connotation with the word game and dating, right? Because I hear that a lot. And I'm sure you've heard that too. Like, I'm too old for dating. And also, the clients that I talk to, they're definitely not in their teens. They're maybe like late 20s, 30s, 40s, and even beyond that, right? That often tell me things like that, right? Like, I'm too old for games. You know what I mean? Why can't people just like go out and just say, this is what I want? Well, you don't just go out there and say like, I want a job at Google and get a job at Google, right? There's certain things that you need to do in order to do that. And if you want to call that a game, then yeah, that's what it is. Getting closer to where we want to get. So yeah, using online dating, right? And online dating, right? Social media. And when I say like everything is a dating app these days too. Yeah, the obvious dating apps are dating apps, right? Tinders and all that stuff, like they're dating apps. But every social media app where you're able to upload pictures of yourself, videos of yourself, and we're able to then DM and connect and have a conversation and continue that conversation, is a dating app as well. So yes, if one of your goals that you're trying to accomplish, right, is finding a healthy romantic relationship, then use these as the tools that are given to you for free, right? Maybe for exchange for some information, but we're not going to talk about that. But they're given to you for free to be able to use them as the tools that they are to accomplish whatever goal, right? You can use social media to grow your business, just like you can use social media to meet new people, to make new connections, to find that romantic partner. So yes, use that as the tool that they are, and they have a strategy that you kind of can follow along to make sure that, one, you're putting your best foot forward and you're starting to attract the type of people that you want to attract, but also too, as you're getting to know them, kind of know what to pay attention to and when to cut these things off, so you don't waste your time. Our time is limited. Our time is our most valuable resource that we have on this earth, and being a little bit more protective of that rather than protective of our egos, because we don't want to hear certain things, or because we're too afraid to get rejected, or because we're too afraid to ask the right questions that might lead to an end of that relationship, where they, you know what I mean? Being a lot more protective with our time than we are with our egos. And I think that this advice goes way beyond just dating and relationships.
100%. You mentioned that you coach people who are various ages. How does your advice differ for somebody who's let's say in their 20s versus somebody who's in their 40s or 50s?
Surprisingly enough, it's extreme. Like my personal advice and the perspective that I try to give my clients is very similar. Is very, very similar. Either whether you're 22 years old or you're 52 years old, I think that the advice for the most part is going to be very, very similar. I don't believe that anyone out there really truly has dating problems or relationship problems. I always say you don't have dating problems, you have life problems. Do you know what I mean? Like who you are as a person and your relationship with your job, with how you make money, your relationship with, other people and colleagues and friends and your family, right? Your relationship with your body and what you do with that, right? And how you take care of that. Your relationship with hobbies and other interests and passion projects and all that reflects into your dating life. It definitely reflects, because dating, what's dating is all about is to know who you are, right? Come right here, and this is the person that I'm trying to be, this is the person I want to be, and this is the person that I am, right? And trying to find people who are exactly the same, right? Dating is not a rescue mission. You're not trying to pull someone up. You're not trying to, get someone to pull you up. You're supposed to find someone. If you want to build a healthy relationship, right? You're supposed to find someone who's like annual. So if you continue attracting people, right, whether you're 22 or you're 52 and you're trying to attract people that you actually want to be, that you actually want in your life, that actually you feel will complement your life, instead of trying to, get someone to pull them up, or you're trying to find someone to pull you up, then you need to make sure that your life is on point, that you need to make sure that your relationship with all of these other things is the same, and that doesn't change, based on your age, right? There are certain things that may be like, if you're coming out of a long-term relationship or a 20-year marriage and you feel like that kind of took over your entire life, and you maybe, gradually lost your hobbies or lost friendships or lost everything, it's difficult, because you're going out there with a huge void in your entire being, right? That you're trying to fill right now, but you don't know what you need to fill it with. And your obvious choice, right? And your obvious reaction is, let me try to fill that with another person, because I had a person who was filling that void. Let me try to fill that with another person real quick. And I think that that's what kind of leads, regardless of age, leads us to a lot of that, all of that heartache and heartbreak that we feel in dating and relationships, right? Because we always feel like we're trying to fill in a void, instead of knowing that we are a full person with all of that full life that we're leading, regardless of our age again, and we're trying to find someone who's at the same level. So my advice is often very, very similar. I look at not just your specific dating situation. I try to get to know you and your life a little bit, to kind of know what areas, because sometimes we think what we need is another partner, right? And I'll be the first one to tell you, and I'm a dating coach, and I'll be the first one to tell you that sometimes that's the last thing that you need. Before you need that, maybe you need to create a healthier relationship with how you make your money. If you feel miserable doing what you're doing, maybe that's where you need to start. If you feel miserable because there are no interests, that you feel like you're just going to your, and no offense to 9-to-5ers, but like you're going to your 9-to-5, but then you come home and just watch Netflix, and you hope to do that again the next day and the next day, right? Maybe that void that you're trying to fill is not a person. Maybe that void that you're trying to fill is adding other things and other aspects into your life that will make you, the person that you want to be. And finally, start attracting the type of people that you actually want to attract in your life.
That's fantastic advice. It sounds like mindset is a huge component of this. Do you think that's the biggest thing that people have to get straight, is having the proper mindset going into trying to meet people and trying to get into the dating life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that mindset is the thing that is going to allow you to accomplish anything, not just your. Obviously, mindset has to be coupled with other things, you know what I mean? The type of work that you need to do in order to get there. But it all starts with that, right? You're familiar with saying, like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. It's impossible to know what kind of person that you're trying to attract, and whether or not it is a person that you're trying to attract into your life right now, unless you change your mindset first, unless you get very clear on the goal, right? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? If I know that, that's half the battle. Now that I know what I'm trying to accomplish, now you devise a strategy on how to accomplish that, right? And you build tools, and you build routines, and you build habits that are supposed to all align, right, with that person, right? Every time you say something, every time you ask a question, every time you go on a date, every time you connect with another person, right, you want to make sure that all of that interaction aligns with a goal again, right? If I'm trying to find a long-term committed serious relationship in the very traditional sense of what relationships are today, right? A monogamous relationship, then I need to get very clear, this is my goal. I need to make sure that the steps I take align with that, right? So do I the question, do I sleep with them on a first date if I'm, and there's no right or wrong answer, right? Based on your personal beliefs and values and your goals, right? But you ask yourself, do I do that or do I not do that? Does that align with my goal, right? So you kind of check with your mindset every single time to see whether or not this aligns or it doesn't align, right? And I think that relationship, that entire mindset, and when I talk about it in my videos, a lot of it, and this is something I personally really enjoy reading and talking about, is the whole Stoic philosophy. I don't know if you're familiar, but
Yeah.
the Stoic philosophy has allowed me to really reach a lot of my personal goals, like in my life. And I think that that the basic of the core of what he meant to me is to be able to separate everything in our lives into two distinct categories. On the one category, we put everything that's outside of our control, right? So in that category, we put what other people, right? Everybody around us, and whether they're the closest people in our lives, whether it's our husbands, our wives, our kids, our parents, right? Our best friends, our colleagues, our business partners, right? Our romantic partners, all of that stuff, right? What they say, what they think, what they do is completely 100% outside of our control. As much as we kind of feel sometimes that we have the impression, right, we have the illusion of control, that we kind of think that because they're so close to us that we kind of know and we can influence what they think, how they think, what they do, but we can never really do that. So what anybody else around us does, says, or thinks is outside of our control. What happens in the world around us, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a war, whether it's, you know what I mean, whatever that is, terrible weather, natural disasters, modern dating, and what it is today, is 1000% outside of our control. We cannot control that, right? We cannot control that. And I think that this is what stops a lot of people is the inability to have that perspective is what stops a lot of people. Because what a lot of people do, right? And when it comes to relationships and other aspects, right? Oh, the world has changed. It's not what it used to be anymore. I'm not going to date because modern dating sucks. So what are you going to do? You know, what are you going to do? So you're not going to date. Okay. Who are you punishing? Right? Are you punishing, other people, or are you punishing yourself? Right? The job market has changed. It's like if you were a milkman back in the 50s, you know what I mean? Like nobody needs it anymore. Are you going to sit down and you're going to be like, well, nobody needs milk? Well, it's not going to go back to what it used to be, right? It definitely not. The time time only goes in one direction, and you got to follow up. You know what I mean? And if you don't adapt to where the times, if you don't adapt to what's going on, if you don't adapt to how society is, how people are, modern dating, what dating apps brought us, you know what I mean? Good and bad, right? If you don't adapt to that, if you don't accept that as a given, because you cannot influence or change that, right? Then you're gonna get stuck right where you are. Taking that power away from you and putting that power onto something external, another person or another thing, right? And it's something completely external. So putting that one category, everything that's with outside of your control, and having a distinct category of what's within your control. So what's within our control, Rob? What we think is within our control. What we think is within our control. Contrary to popular belief, what we feel is also within our control. And I don't say to be like this philosophical type. No, 100% within our control. How you feel about anything else that's going on around you is 100% within your control. Because what controls how you feel, Rob? Right? What controls how you feel? What controls how you feel is how you think. Right?
Yeah.
Two people can look at the exact same thing and feel very, very, very differently about it, right? And they're going to react and respond very differently looking at the exact same thing. Two people can be looking at the pandemic, and one person could say that this is the most horrible, terrible, absolutely horrifying thing that ever happened to the world and me personally. And another person could see opportunities, could see maybe like this is maybe the time to work on this, on that. Maybe this is the time to do this and this and that, right? So external events and what other people say or do to us indirectly or directly has nothing to do with how we feel. How we feel is how we interpret that information, right? So coming back to your point, like the entire, like your perspective, right? Your entire mindset, that's the mindset that you need to start with, right? To know that all of these things, like how did modern dating change? All of these dating apps, what did they do to us? How did people change in the past, whatever? Like how social media influence what people do and what they don't do is irrelevant to you, right? Because you only should focus on what you need to do in order to get what you want anyway.
100%. And I like the word perspective because I think that really sums it up very nicely. Just the way that you approach something that happens to you or around you and approach it from the right angle can make all the difference in how it affects you emotionally and, just in your life in general. So that's great advice. I noticed from watching some of your videos that a lot of them they seem to be more aimed towards women, and talking about dating from a woman's perspective. I suppose because you're a man, that it gives you authority in, how a guy thinks and how to approach guys properly. But first of all, is that accurate that you approach you're dating more towards women than men, or like what are the differences when it comes to men and women and trying to build relationships and meet people?
Well, I don't know. First of all, it's strictly because I am a man that it gives me authority, like you said. But what I am going to say is that I think that most of the advice, like if you watch the videos, and you're a guy, Rob, and you've watched some of my videos, I don't know how much you've watched, but I think that if you maybe ignore the word ladies that I maybe sometimes use at the beginning, I think that advice would apply to you just as much as it would apply to most women.
Definitely.
Would
Yeah.
you agree with that?
Yeah,
So I don't
100%.
necessarily think that I make videos specifically for women, like the advice in, like, okay, let me rephrase that. I don't think that the advice in the videos applies to either gender specifically, right? I think that they apply to both men and women. I think that my channel, kind of like when I started growing my channel, the audience was a lot more female than it was male. So I think that I kind of like catered to that, to double down on the fact that the algorithm kind of chose to show my videos to more women than it did to men, maybe because women are maybe more interested in watching this type of content. And like the algorithm decided that it would show these videos. If you look at like my early videos, I do not specifically cater these videos to women. I make these videos for men and women. Like I said, for some reason, as the channel was growing, and I think that has to do a lot with the algorithm, and I think that has a lot to do with what women watch and look for on social media. I think that a lot of guys are kind of like, if you have a channel about making money, I think that your audience is going to be a lot more male for some reason than it is female, because maybe men just like to watch that stuff on social media more than women do. And I think that dating and relationships is something that maybe women watch more than male. So I think that over time, my female audience grew a lot faster, a lot faster than my male audience. And I think at this point, I'm like at 95 or maybe 96 percent on either YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram is female versus like a maximum of 5% male.
That's really interesting. And it kind of makes sense, because I've always heard that men tend to be more interested in things and women tend to be more interested in people. So I guess it kind of aligns with that, that idea that women would be searching for this kind of advice, perhaps
I think
more
so.
than men.
But like I said, even though I kind of, and this was just something that I started using because I knew my audience was already predominantly female, but I think that originally, and even right now, if you really watch my videos, if you're a man and you want to check out my channel, please do. And if you ignore just the word ladies at the beginning and you watch the rest of the videos, you'll probably find that video caters to men just as much as it does to women.
Yeah, and I can confirm that the content within the videos applies across the board. It's not strictly geared towards women. That's for sure. So I know that meeting people isn't easy for everybody. I mean, that's probably a given. And a large part of it is pushing yourself to exit your comfort zone, get out there, put yourself in situations that might be slightly uncomfortable. And I know that you're big on challenging yourself and pushing yourself. I know this because you have a YouTube channel, or at one time had a YouTube channel where you did exactly that. You took challenges upon yourself and performed them. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. What's the value of challenging yourself and pushing yourself to do something uncomfortable, and how does that apply to dating and meeting people?
Right. So yeah. So I definitely think that, and I kind of think that you would agree when I say that. I definitely think that growth comes from discomfort. Right. We're not growing when we're comfortable and within our comfort zones and doing the same things that we always, used to do. And I think that doing new things just applies to dating, just like it applies to like literally any aspect of our lives that we want to improve, that we want to grow, that we want to become better at. I really don't believe, and this is like the reason why I started that YouTube channel. And now it feels like it was a while ago, but I don't know if this is how we met. That YouTube channel was really, I don't really believe that people are, I think that people are often put limitations on themselves, right? Oh, I can't play the piano. Like I have no sense of rhythm, or I have no sense, or I can't dance because I have no sense of rhythm, or I can't play an instrument because I can't, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, like musically, like you probably tell me what's the term that I'm looking for, that a lot of people say like why they can't produce music or sing, or I don't have a voice, or I can't, play soccer because I'm not coordinated, or I'm not, I don't. And I don't think that's any of these things are true. I think that most of the time, we just put these limitations onto ourselves. Not all the time. We put these limitations onto ourselves, and they're not real. And the reason why we do that is because we are afraid. You know what I mean? We fear that discomfort. We fear. Oh, I can't go to the gym. Like, that's not for me. I can't do that. And I'm into fitness a lot. That this was something that I was used to do. For a very long time now. And I think that it all started the same way. It all started the same way. The first time you go in, well, guess what? You're not comfortable, and you don't see results, right? So you look in the mirror the next day and you go like, well, the gym doesn't work. I'm not good at it, obviously, right? I don't see results. I'm not feeling really well. Like I'm tired today, and I have this like pain all over my body. This is definitely not for me, right? And I think that nothing in life is the same way. If we go out there and you've been single for you've been in a relationship for a long time and you're newly single, and you go out there on a dating app, and the first thing that happens is someone sends you an eggplant emoji, but in a picture form. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like a lot of people tend to say, well, this is uncomfortable. Well, this is not something that I'm used to. This is not something that I want to see. And they go, well, dating apps are not for me. Right. And they just quit. And I'm like, well, what do you think was supposed to happen? Okay, maybe it wasn't that, maybe it wasn't the picture that you wanted to get. Maybe the conversation wasn't, the type of conversations that you wanted to have. Maybe like it was difficult to even connect with someone. Maybe the first time you did, somebody tried to scam you or something. You know what I mean? Like, so anything that we do requires a little bit of that consistency, a little bit of like just showing up and doing the work to, and kind of like trusting that we will get to the destination, trusting that we will get to where we want to get, but not focusing on that. I'm not focused on the fact that I want to find my Prince Charming. You know what I mean? I am focused on what's the next step. I know I don't need to see all the way through. All I need to see is what's my next step. So if I know that my next step is to learn how to set boundaries, learn about what they are and how to set them, because I know that this, I now know that this is something that I need to do in order to be better prepared for dating, for example. Or I know that I need to start by learning how to, read music and read notes, because this is the first step, right? I am not focused on whether or not I can sit down and play a piece right now or do a certain activity right now, right? And this is where my channel came from, is proving to myself first, and hopefully to those who have been watching, you know what I mean, to know that you can do anything you fucking want to do. You know what I mean? That it all starts with a single step. You don't need to see all the way through. All you need to do is focus on what's that first step. So the first step is, do you need an instrument? You need to get an instrument. Do you need to rent it? Do you need to buy it? Fix that problem first. You got that. All right, great. You know what I mean? You need to get some coaching. Do you want to sit down and watch YouTube videos? Okay, cool. Do you want to go out and hire someone? You have the means for that? Do that. And then step by step, you're going to get closer and closer and closer to where you want to get. To me, it's not about talent or about the natural ability. To me, it's just about believing in yourself. And you don't even have to have that much faith in yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to believe that I'm going to be the greatest whatever ever. All I need to believe is that I can take that next step. And if I can see the next step, that's what I need to take. And I see the next step as soon as I get there. Once I get, that sheet of music all done and I understand it, I know what I need to do to get to that, something that's a little bit more complicated, something that's a little bit more. The same thing goes with fitness. The same thing goes with dating.
I love that message. There's a famous saying, I can't remember where it comes from, but the saying is, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
It's absolutely 1000%.
So yeah, I think that's what holds a lot of people back.
Starts here, and that goes back to exactly. That goes back to what I said. People set these limitations onto ourselves. If we want to do it, if we know we're going to do it, we're going to do it. If we believe that we won't do it, and you don't have the voice for singing, or you don't have the musical ability to play an instrument, or you don't have the ability to go out there and find someone, and and when you start, trust me, and that should be like, if you want to be good at something, you need to start by being horrible at something. You need to start and go out there and be terrible. You need to go out there and have awkward dates. Don't feel like I am, or any other dating coach, or anything you watch online, or any, you know what I mean, is going to save you from that. You're going to go out there and you're going to have a terrible conversation, a very awkward interaction with a human being on the first date. And that's okay. That's kind of the point. You know what I mean? That's kind of the point. So don't try to prepare yourself to be amazing and then go out and be amazing. Go out there and be terrible. Yeah, and you're going to be terrible enough times. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that once you get over the fear of landing in those situations, that's kind of when they stop happening, right?
Yeah, and the fear is because we're feared to be horrible. But if you accept that you're going to be horrible, Rob, that fear disappears with it. You know, your first time that you played ever, and I'm sure you played at a venue first time, right? And I'm sure that was nerve wracking, and I'm sure that was like really really scary. And now I'm sure that's not something that just like comes natural to most people. Just go out in front of a bunch of people and do something, where all the attention is on you. But if you accept the fact that what I mean, it's my first time, and it's okay if I'm terrible, and it's okay. And I don't listen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's okay. And you can tell me if your first few shows or the first few things that you played in front of people, maybe even before you got into a band and all that, weren't that great. If you watch them today, you probably cringe watching them, right? And that
100%.
has nothing to do with you. It's the same across the board. Everything that we do, we cringe, and that's okay. And that's kind of the process. That's kind of the entire idea and the entire point of doing something that's outside of your comfort zone. You're expecting not to be great the first time you do something.
Well, I feel like also you cringe because you've grown since then, right? You're not the same anymore. So seeing what you were like back then is uncomfortable because you've changed so much, but that's part of the process. You have to go through that in order to develop. So that's a fantastic message.
Yeah, I think so.
What do you tell somebody who's been struggling and gone on countless dates and met so many different people and doesn't click with anyone and is ready to give up? What do you tell somebody like that?
Well, I think that it goes back to what we were talking about. If you go out there, right, and this is something that I hear often, if you go out there, and this is the reason why a lot of people are getting really frustrated with dating. This is the reason why a lot of people give up on dating altogether, is because, yeah, they maybe have gone out a few times. And yeah, the dates were, terrible, and they didn't connect with anyone, and they found people who only wanted, very different things to what they wanted. And that kind of frustrates them and makes them give up at a certain point. But just like we were talking about just before that, yes, you go out there and maybe the first date and the second date and the third date are terrible, right? But the process is not to just do the same thing exactly the same way over and over and over again and expect different results. As you go out there on a date, there's supposed to be a little bit of that self-reflection. What am I doing wrong? What do I need to do, right? Because if you have the same experience over and over and over again, what's more likely? Is it that everyone you meet or everybody out there are narcissists or assholes or manipulators or emotionally unavailable or insecure or toxic? Or maybe, right? Maybe there's a chance that maybe the type of person that you're putting out there, and you're doing that with good intentions, right? You're thinking that you're doing the right thing, but what's more likely? Is it maybe the fact that you just need to do a little bit of work on yourself? Maybe you need to adjust your approach a little bit. Maybe you need to adjust your strategy when it comes to dating, right? Maybe there are certain things, right, that you don't want to do. Like one of the things that I get all the time, right, is like women are like, well, I know what I want, but every time I meet a person, right, on the first date, I know right away that they don't want the same things. I know right away they're not the person for me. And I've gone through like hundreds of dates and I still can't find anyone, right? And then we talk a little bit, with them and we kind of get to know them a little bit. And then, they come out on the date and they come out with that mental, sometimes actual physical checklist, right? And they come up with a list of things and they're like, okay, well, and they just shoot, they just like create this interrogative kind of interview environment dynamic, right? When they go, okay, Rob, so tell me about your past relationship. Oh, cool. Do you want a relationship? Do you just want to have sex? Oh, okay. Do you want to have kids? How many? 3? Okay. Do you want 3? Because I want, oh, you don't? Okay, cool. And you know what I mean? And just go through their checklist, right? And yeah, they're going to meet 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people. And they're going to eventually come to the conclusion that all of these people don't want what you want. But maybe, right? Maybe you're trying to like fend off and push away the people that you don't want. But maybe what you actually are doing is you're just pushing away everyone, right? Maybe because your approach is not the right approach. Maybe the approach, the interrogation techniques that you have developed, you know what I mean, as a defense mechanism, right? Because you don't want to get hurt, so you go through them. Maybe that's what's stopping you to really connect with the person, because the person that's being interrogated is automatically is going to try to close up, right? Automatically is going to, it's not going to have a good time. It's not going to enjoy the date. And if we don't enjoy the date, guess what's not happening? A second date. I don't want to go out with someone who I felt like it was, even if technically on paper we want the exact same things, and yes, we want to name our kids the exact same names, you know what I mean? But we did not have a good time. We did not enjoy this date. You and I did not connect as, two people at all.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
that's why, you know what I mean? Maybe that's why. So what you need to do is that moment of self-reflection. And at that point, like if you need tools to help you kind of like bring it to the surface of what these things are, that will get you closer to where you want to be. So, you know, and sometimes it does entitle it that you need to change your approach a little bit, change your strategy a little bit, maybe certain things that feel natural to you to ask right away or do right away or do, you know what I mean? Maybe you put a lid on that. Maybe you control that. Maybe you are, you know, as a human being, you need to be able to manage your expectations, to control your emotions. You know what I mean? Like if you just do what feels right to you at every specific moment, Rob, you become a slave to your own, you know, emotions, right? You will never reach any goals that you set out to be if you only are concerned with like how I feel at that specific moment. I want to go and eat a cake right now. I'm craving something, and you go eat it, and then I don't want to go to the gym. I'd rather watch TV. I don't. Are you ever going to make it to the gym? Probably not. Are you ever going to reach your fitness goals? Probably not. If you're always going to just go there unfiltered and say exactly how you feel about things, exactly what you think about things all the time, play with your cards open on the table all the time, are you going to get and build a healthy relationship? Probably not.
that's a really good insight. What are the biggest misconceptions that people have about dating? Have you come across anything in the people that you've spoken to, misconceptions that people have when it comes to dating?
That's a really open question. Misconceptions. I think that the misconception again, and we kind of talked about that, you know, earlier, is that, you know, dating has a lot to do with like, you know, what's going on in the world or other people or other things, and really not too much to do with ourselves. Like we often think that if we have good intentions, right, and we genuinely want to find a good partner, that that's all it takes. I think that's a misconception, right? And the misconception is, and where that comes to fruition, and what we see when we experience is the fact that we meet so many people out there. And I think that today, and I'm sure you've heard this word before, and I've mentioned it earlier, right? Like, oh, everybody out there today, 2022 or whatever, are all narcissists. We're all toxic. We're all this. We're all that. And I'm like, no, most people, by far, most people are people just like you and I. You think of yourself as a good person. You think of yourself as, you know, you come with genuine, true intentions. You try to put yourself first and get what you want out of this life, out of this relationships. And they're doing the exact same thing, right? So if you automatically assume, right, and label everyone around you who don't put your interest in mind and instead put theirs, like they're honestly supposed to, and you consider them toxic right away, right? So for example, I get a lot of people like, oh, he slept with me on the first night and then he never called me again. He didn't sleep with you on the first night, right? Don't take that power back to yourself for a second. You know, don't put that power on to someone else. Nobody sleeps with you, right? This is consensual. You have slept together. You have made that decision, right? You have gone and done this together, right? They're putting their best interest in mind, and hey, maybe just like you, they're like, listen, this feels great, and she's hot, and she's cute, and you know, I haven't been with anybody for a few weeks or a couple of months now, and I kind of want to get it down, you know, and they just did that. They just did that. But now, guess what they want to do the second day, right? Now that their dopamine levels rise, and then they got all that excitement of the, you know, the novelty aspect of just like being physically intimate with someone new. Guess what they want to do on the second date? Guess what they want to do on the third date? They want to recreate that same experience. They want that dopamine rush to happen one more time, right? And that's where like the differences between men and women. This is another big misconception. You know what I mean? I think that. And I'm all for it. I know it's 2022, and I'm often being reminded with comments in my videos. I'm aware that it's 2022, and I'm aware, you know what I mean, about everything that we do towards equality and equal opportunity, you know, when it comes to like the workplace, and salaries, and all that. And I'm 1,000%, you know, for that. But I think that the misconception that although men and women do want the same thing, right? At the end of the day, what we want, right? Let's just like zoom out a little bit, right? Rob, what do we want? You know, human beings, we want to survive. That's primarily the reason why you and I are here. Arguably, that's what it is. Just like we think of ourselves as this sophisticated, you know, exceptional species that, you know what I mean, like we're the center of the universe. But at the end of the day, we're animals just like any other animal, and everybody's objective, primary objective, right, is to survive, as a species, right? And what we do to survive, we either seek immortality in a certain way or we seek to reproduce, right? So there's the whole notion on that, like what we do in different situations, whether the conditions are favorable and unfavorable. But I don't want to get into that too deep. But like what we do right now is we're trying as a human race, and like most animals out there, all animals out there, even single cell organisms, they're trying to do the exact same thing. We're trying to reproduce, to survive as a species, right? So men and women come together with a common goal, right? Is to reproduce, start a family, have kids, and you know what I mean, and continue. You know, our genes are going to, you know, continue moving forward, right? That's the point. But how we get there, right? How we get there is not the same, right? In that sense, in that biological sense, right? We are wired very, very differently. Although our goal is common, how we reach that goal is kind of like the yin and the yang, right? You bring stuff and I bring other stuff, right? Together, they allow us to reach the goal. But how we get there is very, very different. Biologically, we are very, very different in that sense, especially when it comes to, you know, physical intimacy, especially when it comes to dating and relationships, right? We are very different. The way we operate, the way we think is very, very different. Like I said, because my job as a man and your job as a woman are very different. Although our goal is the same, the job is very different, right? And that comes from like strictly biologically, right? That it's not about society and a lot of people like really hate that whole like patriarchy and all that, but it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with our biology, right? At the end of the day, right? And people's like, oh, why can't men like control themselves and not have sex on the first date? I'm like, no, because men are not the ones who are going to get hurt, right? Because biologically, if we have sex on the first night and you end up pregnant, right? My life technically, right? If you think about it, like before we talked about marriages and all that stuff, like the modern society, like this kind of falls on you, right? I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair, but that's how it is. Biologically, that's what's going to happen, right? So yes, it is your job to create certain boundaries. It is your job to do certain things, just like it is a man's job to do other things. So if a man is the driving force, right, they're giving us all of that desire and need to reproduce and part of my friend, but like share our seed, you know what I mean? Like, so we're going to be driving their relationship forward. But I think that it is a woman's job to do other things, right? It is the woman's job to control the pace, right? To make sure that this is the person for her. At the end of the day, as a woman, you are the gatekeeper, right? You control whether or not this relationship ends up in, you know what I mean, like a family. You control all of that. This is your control. Your body is within your control. What you do with it is within your control. You're the gatekeeper on whether or not we procreate and we allow the species to survive. So you need to come from that to that perspective, right? So equality is great, and in a lot of ways, it's amazing. And I think that we are growing as a society, and we are getting better when it comes to that. But I think that in a lot of ways, we are simultaneously also going away from how it should be, of how our biology dictates.
It's a very fundamental thing that you're right. I think it gets kind of suppressed and ignored a lot.
Absolutely. And I see, like, and I understand where this is coming from. You know what I mean? Because I see that in a lot of ways, like our society has taken it to the next level where, you know, and I feel that why women are arguing against that in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Because, you know, they did feel, and they feel, you know, justly so, you know, suppressed in a lot of ways when it came to that. But I think that it's still like there's a healthy middle somewhere, right? It's not one extreme, nor is it the other. There's a healthy middle somewhere. But you know, instead of trying to fight our biology, I think it's always going to be a losing game for us. It's always going to be a losing game. So how we get to that, the goal is common, but how we get there is very different. Learning about that and then knowing how to use that in our advantage to get what we want to get, you know what I mean, is what we need to do.
Man, I feel like we could talk so much longer, but I'm going to end this with one final question. I want it to be a positive one. I want to know what you think is the best thing about dating in 2022. What's something that should be encouraging to everybody who wants to meet somebody this year?
In 2022 specifically?
Specifically, or just, you know, now in the age of technology that we have with the resources at our disposal, like what are the advantages? We've talked about the pros and the cons of dating apps and technology and stuff like that, but what are the greatest things that it has brought us?
Well, I think that, you know, obviously when you say 2022, I tend to think, and I think that's where your question is going, like, right, because we're talking about technology in a certain sense. So that's what has been really changing in the past few years, and every year has been really changing. Obviously, maybe like, I don't know if it's like, a lot of people say, I don't know if it's like a halftime show or this is like the end of the pandemic. People are not sure yet of where we are. in that. And obviously, like the fact that, you know, things are opening up in a lot of places of the world is obviously an opportunity. You know, springtime is just that of where we are right now. You know, springtime is also like just hormonally and again biologically is where, you know, we tend to go out there and meet more people, and like, you know, that kind of combined and coupled with the fact that we're going to go out more often, especially if you live in like the cold places of the world, like we do, right? That this allows us to like go out there and meet people in person and spend time with them, right? So obviously, you know, take that opportunity. This is an opportunity every year that comes back every year. But I think that beyond that, I don't think that, you know, there's something right now, like I said before, I don't think that dating is, you know, getting better or worse through the years. I think that it changes, just like everything changes, right? You work very differently today than you did 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Our jobs have changed. The type of work that we do changed. The way we do the work changed, right? The way we interact with people, the way we entertain ourselves, right? Changed, right? Everything changed. And dating is no exception to that. And that's completely normal. And we have to accept that, right? So I think that every year, every new change, everything brings opportunities, right? It's all about, like, we're going to come full circle here, but it's all about your perspective, right? It's all about how you look at it, right? You can look at it as dating apps are the most terrible thing, but you can also look at it the fact that, hey, we work differently. Most of us work from home now. With or without the pandemic, we were already going into that direction, right? We work from home, right? We don't meet a lot of new people throughout the day, right? We usually go to the gym, and if we do, it's probably the same people that we see all the time. And if we do see our friends, it's like the same friend groups. And you know what I mean? We rarely go out there and meet new people. A lot of us get our groceries delivered, our food delivered. We don't go to restaurants because we just order in, right? So the world is changing in that direction. So you could look at dating apps as this terrible thing that happened to us, but you could also look at it as the tool, which is what it is, and know that this is a tool to meet new people now. And yes, it does require a bit of an adjustment of how you approach it. It is not real life. It is not the same thing as seeing someone across the bar and buying them a drink and saying, hi, how you doing? It's definitely different, right? But all that means is that you need to adjust your perspective. You need to adjust your entire approach and not just say, well, I tried it, just like I would try to go out there and say, hey, I like your shoes, what's going on? And the conversation did not go the right way. You know what I mean? Again, it's not because it's a bad thing. It's always an opportunity if you want to see it as an opportunity, and it's always going to be an obstacle if you want to see it as an obstacle. So I think that don't focus on whether it's 2022. I don't think that today is a better time than yesterday. I think that the best time to do anything that you want to do, Rob,
Right now.
is right now. Is right now.
I love that.
So go out there and date.
Lion, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. This has been a fascinating conversation. Congratulations on the success that you've had. Everybody check out Lion on TikTok. Let everybody know where they can find you.
So they can find me anywhere on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube at DatingByLion, one word, on all the platforms. I have a whole bunch of tools. I have a whole bunch of stuff that you can learn from just beyond the videos. I have free webinars that I've done throughout the past few months that are out there. I have courses. Check them out. It's all linked on my website.
Cool. Thank you so much, man. We should do this again.
I appreciate the time. Thank you, Rob.